Hey there, my name's Karen and I'm going to be your art instructor for today. I want to welcome you to this lesson. This is The Tree of Life, 1905 by Gustav Klimt. He was a pretty cool artist. He liked the rich jewel tones, the golds and the maroons and burgundies and jades, all those deep royal colors. Now you'll notice that your box came with lots of supplies. It came with an information sheet, paint, a paint palette or wells, a couple of brushes, and a sponge brush. These are disposable. You do not need to try and clean it. If you want to, you might get 1 or 2 uses out of it, but not much more than that. And then you also got a canvas. Now canvas is simply wood wrapped in fabric. It's been stapled on the sides. Notice that the sides are not painted. That means you can paint them. It is called gallery wrapping, and it's wonderful because then you don't have to frame your piece. Now the other thing that you have are the 4 paint colors. I did not give you additional colors because honestly they're not needed in the painting. All of the color variations in this painting are done simply by blending, which I'm going to show you how to do. Now there are a couple of things that you're going to need to provide on your own. They're not expensive, I promise. You're going to need a napkin source. Some people prefer actual cloth towels. Totally fine, but please know, acrylic paint, which is what you're using today, stains. If it dries, it is there forever. So if you use a cloth towel and it's one of your good ones, it's now officially an art towel. Now another thing that you're going to need is a water source. I like to use glass and I like to fill it halfway up. You do not need to fill it all the way up or you're just going to splatter everywhere. Now this is a paintbrush. It is wood. There's this thing here called the barrel, and then you have your bristles. Now you have lots of different kind of brushes. They have synthetic, which is what this is, which is best for acrylic paint. You can get horsehair, human hair. I mean, the list goes on with what kind of paintbrushes you can buy. Now these, if you don't take care of them, you'll give it a bad hair day, and you'll have hairs just kind of everywhere. So you don't want to be rough with your brush. You always want to be gentle with your art supplies. Notice I'm bringing the bristles up to a point. That way, when you wash it and you dry it, the bristles are not going everywhere, and you will have a nice clean point. Alright, so we're going to go ahead and get started with the lesson. Are you ready? Make sure that you have your water source, your napkins, all the supplies provided for you, and you are in a nice flat surface. I'm going to let you pause this video so that you can go get your supplies, and then we'll get started in a second. Okay, we're back. Now, you'll notice that I have cleared away the original, but I will constantly be bringing it in to show you some details. We have our canvas here and our wells. Now first, you're going to notice that your paints have plastic covers on them. Take those off. You pop the top gently. There are no covers over the paint. It is instantly exposed paint, so you want to not fling them apart because you might actually squirt it. You're going to put some in your well, and do not fill a whole lot. A little paint goes a long way. It's easier to put paint into the palette than to put it back into the container. Oh, look at that. I call these paint boogers. Isn't that lovely? It is just where some paint coagulates. It's still functional paint, but you don't want that big blob on your painting. So just tap that piece, but don't scoop it. And the last color, white. All right, now to get started, we're first going to coat the entire canvas and the sides in a yellow and white combination. Now, normally you would think I would just immediately dip into the palette. Not the case for this one. It's a lot easier to just simply put a couple of dots on your canvas and the yellow. Okay, now the more yellow you add, the deeper yellow the painting will be. The more white you add, the more white, soft yellow the painting will be. If you want to give it more of an antique look, you could add a little bit of the brown. We'll see how this looks before we start adding additional colors. So you're going to take your brush. Now these sponge brushes have you can kind of feel inside the plastic continues in. Okay? If you press too hard, you can snap it. You don't want to do that. So I like to give it a bracing finger on the back and grip it. Use the side, not the tip. Use the side and just start dragging it across. You're going to get an instant blend. Instant. You're going to look like a master without even trying. You want to make sure that all of the canvas gets covered. Acrylic paint does not spread, so if you leave any parts unpainted, they will be unpainted. You also want to change your view, because if you're slightly angled to your canvas, you might miss a few flaws or spots. There we go. When you blend with this painting and any painting, the more you rub your brush through the two colors, the more it's going to become one color. We don't want that. We want some shifts of color. So I'm going to go ahead, because I kind of did that with this one, I'm going to go ahead and add a little bit more white. Just little bitty bits. And I think I'm going to add barely any brown. Grab your brush again, finger on back, and start dragging it. Work it in there. Give it that antique-y look. I find that that looks a little better than the bright sunshiny yellow. Because Gustave liked those rich royal tones. So we want to try and stay true to that. Okay, so the front is done. Now we want to do our sides. There should be enough on this brush, because it is a sponge and sponges soak, to be able to do the majority, if not all, of the edges. If you find that I am going a little too fast for you, please, please, please pause the video. It's totally fine. You're not going to offend me. I know we all work at different paces. Just make sure that you fill in your canvas completely. Okay, so now you should have your piece all covered. You can blow dry it if you want to speed up the process. Blow dryers, the way you can tell that your paint is dry is it's not shiny anymore. Now, the next part, you can use transparent tape or you can freehand it, but we're going to go ahead and do the land. Now, to do the land, it needs to be a relatively straight line. If you do the transparent tape, you would pull the tape out, you would lay it where you want your land to be. If you have it too high up, you're not going to have a lot of room for your tree. If you do it really, really low, that's fine, but there's just barely going to be any land. So you stick it on here as straight as you can, take your brush, and then paint the part. Anything that is on the tape will not stay on your canvas. You'll be able to pull it off, and boom, you'll have a straight line. Now, I find that I prefer to freehand it. Takes a couple tries, but that's okay. So to freehand this one, I'm going to take my brown paint. I'm going to gently put paint on my brush on both sides. I'm going to turn my canvas so it's a little bit more easy for me to pull my line to me. I'm going to put my brush up and down. Sometimes I use my finger as a guide. It does not have to be exact, but we do want a decent little landline. Go back up to get any goops, and boom. Now, barely touch any water, or barely touch your water. I didn't wash off my brush, I just touched it, because now what I'm going to do is with that water, I'm going to drag some of that brown down. You might have to dip it in the water a couple of times, but a key point here is to know that acrylic paint, watered down, is watercolor paint. So what we're essentially doing is turning our brown paint into a watercolor ground. If you wash away too much of it, just grab a touch of the brown and put it back. With all paintings, a soft touch gets you a lot further than a tough or a hard touch. So be gentle with your paint. There. That looks pretty good. Okay, so now it's time to start on the tree. Now it is a free-handed tree. Gasp. You're going to have to freehand. It's okay. It's easy. We all know what a tree looks like, right? Hang tight. Let me get you something to look at. Okay, so if you feel like you need to practice, by all means, get a pen, get some paper, and try this out. So if this is our land, right, a tree is quite simply backwards parentheses. Okay, now in order to make our tree of life, alright, I'm back and I want to show you the basics of drawing a tree. It's quite simple. If this is our land, a tree is backwards parentheses. You don't want to make them too curvy because they'll look like that, and that's wrong. Gustav Klimt had almost a barrel-like tree. Now then we're going to continue on with our swirls. But first, we're going to want to divvy out the branches. In the original sample, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 coming out. Now art is organic, and if you have 8 coming out, it is okay. If you can only fit 5, that is fine. Don't freak out, because we're going to fill with spirals everywhere. When you see the spirals on the bottom, notice they all come around, down, up, and around. That way we don't have any hanging down below it. They're all coming up. But the rest of the tree can come down, come up, however you want to. So, when it comes to doing the branches, I like to do V's. That makes 1 branch, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. So I got 6. So then, curve. Curve. Now obviously this is a drawing, so it's a little bit more free. So I want you to also remember that when you paint a branch, branches go thick to thin. So you don't want skinny little branch going really fat with a spiral. It would look funny. Bad. So try and keep them more universal. So back to our painting. I'm going to freehand this. I'm going to take my brown. Now I'm not going to leave my wells on my canvas, though it would make things easier on me. I don't trust that the back doesn't have paint on it. So I'm going to just dip and hold it. And try not to dip your thumb in the white paint. Okay, so I'm going to try an eye where I think my center is. I'm going to guess approximately right there. So I'm going to go ahead and paint in my parentheses. With acrylic paint, it does dry kind of quickly, so we need to move quickly through this process. So just like we did our land, we're going to dip it in our water and we're going to start dragging it towards the center. Drag it to the center. Because we want the center to be almost brown, but not quite. We want to see a little bit of that yellow sticking through, because what that's going to do is make it look rounded. When you have dark on the sides, light in the center, that gives it a rounded effect. It's just an illusion to the eye, or a trompe-l'oeil. All right, so now we're going to start on our swirls. Honestly, I feel like you can't have too many. I love the swirls. I want to do swirls all day long. I'm using my brush just like a pencil. Come around. Some of them are going to be dark. Some of the parts of the branches will be light. I don't want any lines just sticking out like that. I want to turn them into something. So if your brush accidentally goes, oops, turn it into something. Swirl it around. Also notice that I'm not bending my bristles too much. Whenever you paint, if you push down hard with your bristles and drag, you'll notice you get a really thick line. If you just use the tip and don't bend the bristles, you're going to have a thin line. The thin line is what you want. That is an excellent line for details, for fine details. Sometimes the thick line is what you need, and that's okay too. So as I'm filling with my swirls, you notice I'm dipping in my water first, grabbing a little bit of paint and coming over, because I want it to flow freely and smoothly. Now this spiral or swirl runs off the page. That's okay. If you don't want it running off the page, like our sample, kick it back up with a swirl. Okay? You can do your own version of this painting. The main key thing to think about is fill it up. You want tons and tons of swirls, but you also want them to look kind of organized. It is a Mod Podge of swirls, yes, but if you have it too swirly, it's going to look more like an afro on a stick, and that's not what we're going for. Swirl it around. Whatever you do on one side, try and echo it on the other side. If you can't exactly, that's okay. And you're going to also bring in your points. Notice I'm not bending my bristles. Our music today is provided by my wind chimes outside my studio. Hope you don't mind them. We have a windy day in Louisiana. Alright, so I have my first set going on. So now I want to add another row, and another row, and another row, and another row. So, to make it to where it's kind of a flip of a flop, I'm going to go ahead and do my center line next, because it's kind of straight up. And for this one, I'm just going to swirl this way, swirl this way, swirl this way, swirl this way. When you get to the top, just stop. But notice I have a definite start-stop there and there. So quickly, while it's still wet, drag it out and blend it down. All right? Now on occasion you will hear a mild little meow, and that's the studio kitty. Sometimes she makes an appearance in our video. So her name is Millie, and her predecessor loved staying in the studio, and Millie's starting to grow accustomed to being a studio kitty. My students love her. So I figure we'll keep her at the studio. Of course, she comes home with me on occasion. So now we have our 3 lines. Okay, so you want to blend in where you start and stop. Smooth out your points. Notice I do not have a lot of paint on my brush ever. This is a paintbrush, not a spoon. Do not scoop your paint, just dip. Very gentle dip. So the next step is to fill in with the other main branches. So, oh, let me grab a little water. You also notice I'm only working on the edge. I never dip in the center. I'm going to go ahead and do one here. I'm going to swirl, swirl. They don't have to be precise. Keep that in mind. That one's not perfect. It's okay. I'm not going to be upset about it. I'm just going to make it work. And up. Okay, so now we're going to do another one over here. Spiral, spiral, spiral. I love this painting. It is one of my favorites. So now I'm going to do it on the other side, but look, I need to make sure that I blend these two coming down. Use your finger if you need to. I'm a huge finger painter, so you'll notice that every now and then I just throw my fingers in it. If you don't like that, by all means, use your brush and a napkin. I'm just a messy painter. Now that line went a little bit too light, so I'm going to hit it with a little bit dark again. And I'll do another one here. Okay, so now I have my lines. Let me blend this in. I want to thicken this. I don't want a straight line crossing over. I barely take any paint, and I'm going to go ahead and thicken up my branches where they're meeting with the trunk. Basically making upside down V's and filling them in. All right. This little baby right here. I like that. One of my favorite artists of all time is Bob Ross, and he talks about happy trees. So let's go ahead and make this one a happy tree by adding more and more and more swirls. So anywhere there is a gap or a branch that needs more branching off of, fill it. So like this area here, I can add lots more. I'm going to kick up some more on this one. Do that. And bring that one up. This one I can bring up. This one I can bring up. There's still a little gap. So maybe I'll put another swirl here. Maybe a little baby swirl here. Just make sure all of your swirls are coming off of swirls. That's the main thing you need to remember. Every swirl comes off a swirl. Now if you have a tiny little space like right here, do a comma. Do commas wherever you need additional space filler, but it's not quite big enough for a spiral. So we're going to go ahead and continue on filling in. If you want to pause the video here, I'm just going to do exactly what I did here for the rest of it, and then we're going to start with the fine details. Okay, so I'm back. Hopefully your tree looks something similar to this. Now, quick interesting thing is if you have a spot that you don't like, even if it's dry, you can take a clean brush, and since we haven't washed our brushes, I'll show you how to wash your brushes too. But you get a clean brush with the water still on it, and let's say I don't like this spot right here. I can just wiggle my brush over it, and sometimes, not always, the paint will lift up in that water, and then I take a teeny tiny piece of napkin and I can wipe the unwanted paint away. Doesn't always happen the way you want it, and every blue moon you might take the wrong paint away, like your background, but if you do it gently, you should be okay. Now back to how to clean your brush. You have your water and you have your brush, and you're going to put your brush in there. Pretend that you have poured chocolate into your glass and it's sitting all on the bottom, and then you pour your milk. What you want to do is stir up your milk, right? So you stir where the brush is hitting the chocolate on the bottom. Stir, 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 stir. It's tapping the bottom. And what that's doing is it's loosening the paint that's in the bristles and breaking it out into the water. And then you just, hello Millie, the studio kitty. Then you just drag it on the side of the glass, and with your napkin, gently, gently drag your bristles across it. So now you know how to clean your brush, and you know how to remove spots if you have any that you don't really like. I personally like the slight mess up areas. I think it goes very well with the painting. You notice that there's slight mess up parts everywhere. The reason you don't fully notice it is because I've disguised it with dots. Now these dots are quite simple to do. I'm going to start with the first color. I'm going to try some yellow. I'm going to dip in my yellow. I'm not going to add water to it. I'm going to start just streaking in little commas of yellow everywhere. Drag it in a little. You don't want big blobs, or as my students call boogers of paint. But that will help disguise some of the uh-ohs. Put it in a few spots, not too far, too much, you know. You can even, if you want to, add a little bit into the tree. Drag it out, drag it out, drag it out. Okay? Then you're going to start dipping in other colors. But I'm not going to clean my brush. I'm not going to clean my brush because I want my yellow to start blending in with the other colors and making new colors. So I'm just going to come in with my brown again, and I'm going to start dotting. And these are not going to show up as much, so use the brown dots on lighter swirls like this one. And I usually go 3 or 4, 2, 3, 4. I'm trying to keep them in the size of the swirl. I'm not like going larger. Put them anywhere you feel. Space them out. One up here. Okay. Yeah, one there. So then I'm going to dip it in my black. And I'm going to go ahead and add some throughout. Now the black is a little more stern of a color, so you want to be very precise with your marks with the black. My brush is making tiny hearts, and I think I kind of like it. With art, you just have to have a wing it attitude. So many things can determine whether or not your painting or drawing is going to look good. I mean, honestly, if it's raining outside, it can completely alter the look of your painting. Humid days will cause your paint to not respond right. It's very similar to when, like, you paint your house. If you're painting the house outside, you don't want to paint it when it's raining, obviously. But the same goes with the inside as well. You don't want to paint on the inside if it's raining, because you still have the same weather that's on the outside on the inside of the house. So if it's a hot day, it's a pretty good day to paint. Your paint might dry faster. but that's still good. Okay, you notice I'm putting some on the tree itself, and I'm going to add a couple of little areas. 1, 2, 3, and 4. My sample has this one kind of travel onto another one. 5. Alright, so I still have paint on my brush. Not a lot of it, but there's still paint on that brush. So I'm going to dip back into my brown. And I'm going to hit some more branches. That's just going to give me a darker brown. Just keep filling with that darker brown now. And then start bringing it down into your tree. Now, I'm going to go ahead and switch to the white. The white, I do want a cleaner white, so I am going to go ahead and wash the darkness out of my brush. Stir up your chocolate milk. Drag it gently on your glass, gently on your napkin. I like to roll as I drag. And then I'm going to grab my white. With this white, I'm going to add it anywhere you feel you need it. Use your pinky as your stabilizer. If you're having a hard time, if you're wiggling, use your pinky. Another thing to do, put your elbow on your table, hold your arm. And that arm will be a little bit of a stabilizer as well. If you're really, really, really shaky, you can take 2 of the same size objects that are taller, so maybe 2 small boxes, or even 2 platters face down, and then take a ruler and stretch it across. What that's going to make is a bridge that you can put your hand on and paint. You can buy them, but honestly, they're making a whole lot of money on something that you can make from home. I don't like buying the specialty things at art stores. I feel like there's easier, more economic ways of doing everything. And I think that's part of why people like the lessons that I give. Is I'm not trying to sell you on anything. If it's a product I really like, I'm going to tell you about it. But if it's a product that I know an easier, faster, cheaper way of doing it, that's what I'm going to do. Okay, so now I'm going to start bringing it into these down here. You'll notice they kind of shine, which means they're still kind of wet. So I want to go ahead and put a couple of pure white dots on each of them, not touching the wet colors. And then I'm going to go ahead and splot a couple times where it is wet. And that's going to give another variety of color as well. Clean my brush off. Some of the circles in the tree have lost some of the yellow. So I'm going to go back in and add a little bit of yellow in there. If you want more dot-like circles, use the back of your brush. Remember, this is inspired by Gustav's painting, but it is not necessarily a reproduction. Well, it's not a reproduction, it is your version. So go to town with it. Enjoy doing it. Have fun with it. The final thing to do with this painting is the edges. So I'm going to take our old sponge brush. It's kind of getting a little crusty, but that's okay. I'm going to gently dip it into my well of brown. I'm going to tap some of it, and I'm just going to drag it along my edge a couple times. I like to do 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. 1, 2, 3. That gives it the rustic look, the raw border edge. Oh, look at that. I grabbed a little too much and I smeared my white. So I can either come back with my water and clean that up, or I can take this brown and go back over it and disguise it. And that is a Gustave Clement painting. Your final thing that you must do, this is so, so, so important, is sign it. Now, people have a hard time coming up with their signature, and I'm not kidding you whenever I say that I've had students ask me to sign their name to their paintings. I'm not going to do it. So, here are my tricks. A lot of artists are very into getting their name out, and so they sign real big. I'm not about that. I'm about my art. Some people like to have a picture, you know, draw a little puppy dog or something. I'm not about that either. What I like to do is my initials. Once again, I stuck my finger in white paint. I like to do my initials. I like them to be subtle. I like to do the date. And I try and do it in a smaller font, using only the tip. I'm going to do brown because I find that if I stick it in this bottom area right here, it won't stand out too much. And I'm going to come in and I'm going to just do my K, M, apostrophe, 15. Just that simple. So I hope you have enjoyed this painting. Now I want to go over a few things about cleanup. Cleanup is important. You have all this color. Remember whenever I said don't put much in your plate? I wasn't kidding. I have a lot left over. I actually am okay saving it. You don't have to do this, but you know, I'm trying to do my part for the world. I even reuse my styrofoam plates. I can't even talk. That we use in class. My students are like, Miss Karen, do I have to? Yes, you do. Okay. Because if you notice, we didn't use much paint, and the amount of paint I'm picking up, you could make another 2 of these paintings. Now, canvas can be bought at any local art store, and I do believe that places like, you know, Walmart carries them now. Sometimes you can find them at places like CVS and Walgreens. You'll notice that canvases are white. White canvases mean that they've been primed. Primed canvas is good because canvas is made out of fabric, which is woven, which means there's little tiny holes, and you don't want those to pop air into your paint. So as long as it's white, you're good. Or especially primed with a color. Sometimes you can get black ones or red ones or, you know, stuff like that. You can hand stretch a canvas. It is difficult, very, takes a lot of muscle. Ooh. But you need raw canvas, you need a staple gun, you need a wooden frame, and it's just a whole lot of work. And honestly, it's cheaper, if you're just doing a couple, it's cheaper to buy them pre-made. Just like this one. Okay. Now to hang this, you can take 2 tacks on your wall. Make sure it's even. And yeah, if it's still wet, you can blow dry it as well. Now for your brushes, this water is not clean enough to make this brush ready to be put away. You're going to actually want to take a little bit of soap, put it in the palm of your hand. Dish soap, ivory soap, it doesn't matter. Any kind of soap that will bubble. Okay, so what I have done, I slipped away for a second. I put a little bit of Dawn soap in my hand and a touch of water. I understand my hand is dirty. It's okay because it's going to wash off of the brush. I take my bristles. I'm going to gently make circles. What I'm doing is working those bubbles up into the bristles. They'll get nice and sudsy up there. I'll do the other one. Bubble, bubble, bubbles. Notice the bubbles. Bubbles, bubbles. See that? And then we will run it under clean water, making sure to spread the bristles. Don't pull the bristles, because you can literally pull the bristles out of your brush. But you want to continue this motion and this motion until your water runs clear. Then you'll want to dry it on your napkin and either lay it on a flat surface once you have given it the final, or put it up like this in a cup. This is the way I usually store mine. Your napkin and sponge brush can be thrown away. If you want to try and reuse this, you can, but you're going to have to really work that out. And, you know, honestly, these are so inexpensive. I don't recommend it. I mean, I know I'm trying to do my part for the world, but sponge brushes are asking a lot. All right, well, you have a lot of supplies left, and I hope that you will have future subscriptions with us and can put that paint to good use. And if you don't have future subscriptions with us, I hope you decide to give these as gifts to your friends because they're fabulous. Please feel free to send us video or pictures, comments. We'd love to post them on our website. If you have any tips or critiques, I'd also love to hear that too. If it's bad, email it, please. All right, you guys, this has been fun. I've enjoyed it. Thank you so much for taking your time to paint your Clement tree, and know that I really appreciate the fact that you have an interest in art. Art is so important. It is an amazing outlet. It is an amazing thing for people of all ages. It's therapy. If nothing else, it should be fun. If you stress out doing art, you need to do it more. All right, you guys. Well, thanks so much for tuning in for the Pretty Trees, The Tree of Life by Gustave Clement. This is Karen, and have a wonderful day.